to the Preserving Freedom podcast, episode 14. As I said before, every episode is special. This one just has a little different feel to it as we are about to celebrate America's 250th birthday. So my fellow Americans, let's set aside the differences and let's enjoy this weekend. Let's enjoy the freedom, the patriotism, because my guest today, we all remember, for those of us that can, remember 9/11. We remember where we were watching, and for a while, everyone came together as one. It didn't matter the differences, we came together as one. So I ask you all, maybe not just this weekend as we celebrate America's 250th birthday, let's continue to do it every day. All right? It's all right to be different. That's what's one of the things that makes America great. But again, my guest today, I buckle up, hold on. It is going to be an amazing ride. It is truly my honor to welcome Army veteran Nathan Coward. Nathan, how you doing, brother?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, Jason.
It is an absolute honor. I truly appreciate it. I do have to say before I get started, seeing your last name, and I'm not here to, hit on family history and whatnot, but in listeners, you're going to, as you hear his story, you're going to be like, man, that name just doesn't match who this guy is. So again, I am not poking any fun at family tradition or anything like that. Please know that, nothing but respect. But when I see the name, I'm like, no, this isn't Nate. But glad to have you. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah, my last name, I got more people that ask me the way that you asked me than give me a hard time.
Yeah.
I'm 6'5". I'm a big guy. I remember in basic training, I had a drill sergeant come up to me and he goes, "Coward, I'll bet you got a lot of shit for that." And I said, "Not since grade school, drill sergeant." And that was about the last I heard of it. But when I went through EIB, every single station, 40 stations, every time we went to a new station, that same question was asked every single time.
You were reminded. Again, no poke to the Coward family and again, the rich family history that they have. So getting started, born and raised in Madison in Dane County. Tell us about life growing up back then, when what I call the simpler times.
Yeah. It was simple, like you said. Yeah, I grew up, I played football for Sun Prairie, and that was, I don't know what you want to know about my childhood beyond that.
It's your story. Anything, what position in football did you play?
Defensive tackle and defensive end, yeah.
So were you a big guy growing up in high school? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was always a big guy. So I went all-state my senior year, and I was always a starter, and yeah, so I loved football back then.
Yeah.
Now I think about it every day when my shoulders hurt.
I know, fun to watch, but the thought of it just, it reminds you the body parts that hurt. So,
that's right.
How's Sun Prairie football doing nowadays, Do you
not as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
When my junior year, we were number 2 in the state. My senior year, we were number 1 in the state, and I don't think they're at that same caliber anymore, but boy, their football stadium has changed. Like, it used to be just a normal high school football field, and now it's like, it's a stadium, man. Like, they really rocked it out there.
Yeah, some of these high school stadiums that are coming up or have just been built, I get why the price of admission is a little more expensive. They're beautiful. They are, but I'm like, am I in high school? So, but getting back to who had the biggest influence on you as a young man?
My grandpa, for sure.
Tell us about Grandpa.
Well, my grandpa was a World War II veteran of the Battle of the Bulge. And when he enlisted into the military, he went in as a anti-aircraft artillery.
Okay.
And quickly during World War II, they figured out that was useless. And so Grandpa got reclassed into infantry. But, he was always just a loving person. He could get along with anybody and just an amazing role model. That's who my grandpa was.
It seems to be the pattern for, the greatest generation, our World War II vets. That's why they're the greatest generation.
Right.
Just incredible people. One of my grandfathers as well, Battle of the Bulge. I would give anything to spend a day with him. Did you ever talk with your grandfather about his service, or he talked to you about it?
I did. He didn't really go into depth especially about the Battle of the Bulge, but there was one story. During my service, he got prostate cancer, and so I got to go home and see him before he got real bad. And I was sitting in the living room, and I was flipping through some old pictures. And my grandpa always told the family he was a private of mess up. That's about as much as we knew. And so I'm flipping through, and I come across a picture, and there's Grandpa wearing E5 rank, right? And I kind of smiled, and I'm like, yeah, Grandpa borrowed his buddy's jacket to show off to the girls, And I kind of laughed, And I kept on flipping through, and pretty soon I came to a picture, and Grandpa was wearing first sergeant rank. And I couldn't even hold it in. I'm like, Grandpa, what the fuck are you doing wearing first sergeant rank? And maybe he'd get mad at me for telling this story, but I think it's so he sat back in his chair and he laughed and he goes, oh, I thought I was going to go to the grave with that one. And he said, a little bit after the Battle of the Bulge, you got a little R&R in Paris. And he said when he got there, he liked the girls there just a little too much. And so he stayed just a little too long. And when he came back, they considered him AWOL. And so they knocked him all the way from E8 down to E1. And that's where he stayed for the rest of the war. And so that's why he told the family that he was a private of mess up. But in my book, he was the general, man. He was just the most amazing person. And he was still there for his brothers. I can imagine it's going through the Battle of the Bulge and then having to go back. I can't even imagine what he was struggling with at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's E8 to E1. Man, they didn't mess around back then.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And he wasn't lying when he told the family that he was a private of mess up. He was honest with the family that time.
Did he recall any other stories about, kind of with that nickname, private of mess up?
Well, he told me one time, and I can't remember where he was at, but they were stationed kind of on the border of this village. And he could see the Germans going from one building to the next. It was really cold out, he said. And he said they would carry this bucket full of potatoes. And they go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And he said every day, he'd point his rifle up in the air just to see if he could get near them. And he said one day he pointed his rifle up and he pulled the trigger. And he said he swore it dropped right in that bucket. And the guy dropped the bucket and ran off. And then they never saw the potato guy again. But that was really the extent. My grandpa didn't like to talk about, the stuff that he went through.
Yeah, so, I can't imagine. Can't imagine. Your family, as you have already begun to explain, incredible military legacy spanning multiple generations and branches of service. Yep. Aside from your grandfather, other family members and the impact they had on you with their service.
Oh yeah, I mean, my dad was born on a Air Force base in Japan. My grandfather on my dad's side was in the Air Force. My dad was a Cav Scout. I've got a couple uncles that are retired from the Navy. I've got one that was in the Marine Corps, and I've got cousins that were in the Army. And I don't think it was one individual thing. I think it was just sort of the whole family. We had that sense of duty.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Despite the military history, you had mentioned that you initially did have a dream of serving.
No.
What ultimately led you to enlist in the Army in June of 2000?
Well, when I got out of high school, I had it in my head that I was going to be a diesel mechanic. And so I went to Wyoming Tech in Laramie, Wyoming. And that was kind of a challenging time out there. That was just after Matthew Shepard was killed. He was the gay kid that was tied to the fence and left for dead. And so that was right outside of Laramie. And so there was a lot of conflict in town and in the nation with that stuff. So it was kind of a weird experience going out there. I got my education in diesel mechanics. I came home, started doing that. And, I'd come home covered head to toe in grease every single night. And as much as I enjoyed the mechanics of it and just the thought process, I'd work for 10 hours for like $11 an hour, and then I'd scrub and for an hour to get all that shit off of me, and then I'd wake up and do it the next day, and I started to realize it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I started exploring the military, and I didn't tell my family about it at all because I wanted it to be my decision, not theirs.
Before, if I may interject, before, what do you think, if you were to tell your parents then, go back in time and tell them that you had that thought, do you think that the trajectory would have, something else may have came from it, or?
No, I just wanted the decision to be my own.
Okay.
I didn't want it. I knew how much my family cared about the military, and I knew my mom was not going to want me to do it because she doesn't want me to be in danger, and I knew my dad was like going to be, yeah, absolutely, that's where you need to go, get out of here, So I knew what their response was going to be. I didn't want their response to influence my decision, and I was young and dumb, so I thought, this was going to be uniquely my decision. I was going to make the same decision as every other person in the rest of my family, and it was going to be uniquely mine somehow, right? So the irony kind of slipped me there, but yeah. So.
Well, kudos to you. I've heard this a handful of times, that you realized you were in a position that you didn't want to be in, and you made a change.
Yeah.
So I think there's too many of us, just an opinion, that, they stay in that spot, that they just don't really like. And we all get one go around, right? Go out there and make it yours.
That's right.
So, why did you choose infantry and the 11th Bravo MOS, except for your recruiter telling you that's the only job available?
No, that wasn't it at all.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no. So I took my ASFAB, and there were only a couple of jobs I couldn't do, and that was because of my height. I couldn't be like a tank guy, and I couldn't be a pilot, And so I finished my ASFAB, and I went out, and my recruiter says, "Well, you can do basically whatever you want. What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be infantry." And he looked at me, he goes, "No, really, like, what do you want to do?" And I had it in my head that I wanted to be that guy out in front, man, making the change and having the real impact, hands on. And looking back, maybe that wasn't the most wise decision, but I don't regret any of my service at all. I think if I was going to offer somebody advice, it would be, do something that you can use outside of the military. When I got out, like, nobody needs a guard that knows how to shoot a grenade launcher, right? Like, that's never going to happen again. And so there weren't a lot of skills from the infantry that translated to my civilian life. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I had it in my head that I was just going to be this high speed, jumping out of planes, being a badass, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, good for you. And kind of similar, you mentioned, there, and I know you'd agree, there's skills and tactics and leadership you can learn from the infantry to utilize on the civilian side, but kind of on the civilian side, except for maybe like your squad or something like that, like, where else can you do infantry stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you could be a decent police officer. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways that leadership training translates significantly. I think, that's probably the strength of the infantry, right? Is you have to be a good leader to lead in the infantry. You can be subpar in a lot of other areas with different MOSs, but you cannot be a shit leader in the infantry. That will not work.
No. And we'll leave it at there because I know a lot of great ones. Take us back, Fort Benning, 2000. What was the biggest challenge of basic training in infantry AIT?
Heat. Man, I came from Wisconsin. I was climatized to the cold weather, and I decided to go in July and August. Like, what a poor decision that was. So it was definitely the heat, man. Yeah. But it wasn't bad. There was a lot of getting yelled at and shit like that. But I grew up in a military family, so it was like, dad getting mad on a Thursday night, kind of.
You had some good training prior to it.
Right. Yeah. They probably.
Was there a moment during training when you realized I can do this and that I belong here?
I don't think there was a decision that I can do this. There was. I never gave myself an option of failing, right? Like, it was just, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, and there's no other option, and that's the end of it. Yeah.
I like that. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. How did it feel arriving at your first duty station with the legendary 1st Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard?
You know, I had this image of the Old Guard before I got there because, you know, you can't sign up to go to the Old Guard. You have to be recruited. It's one of the only military bases in the country or in the world, actually, that's the case. And so I had this idea that, you know, I was going to go there. I was going to wear the same sunglasses that the Tomb Guards wear because that's part of the Old Guard, right?
Yep.
And, you know, we were going to be badasses guarding the president and stuff like that. And I got there, and maybe it wasn't quite that way, but it was, the Old Guard is so high speed, man. I guess I never imagined that anyone could expect that much from one person. You know, there was so much that went into it that, it was beyond anything I could even imagine before I got there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so my point is, you know, the high speed, obviously, you know, you got Arlington, you know, that's there as well. And I assume / you understand there's more to it that goes on at the, you know, the 3rd Infantry there. But the standard they upheld, you know. I wish we could take some of that currently today, you know, not pointing fingers at anyone, but again, those standards and, you know, that professionalism, and I'm sure they have some too that's, you know, they need that check every now and then, right? Just like all of us, but you know, we need to absorb some of that, I think, in our military today. And
I think that I really feel like, you know, the military should do better just sharing with soldiers that mission of the Old Guard, because I hear a lot of veterans talking about how they were forgotten and left behind. And, you know, that's the mission of the Old Guard, is to remember everyone, right? When you watch the tomb walk, they're not just walking for those people in the tomb. They're walking for every one of our brothers and sisters that never made it back home. And you can't feel forgotten when you realize that mission, and when you realize how much discipline and just effort that they put into that. And it's not just the tomb, it's every unit that goes out there and does a burial in Arlington National Cemetery to pay honors to another hero that died in service. Every single person in that unit gives so much effort. And I wish the military would do better at sharing, because it's not just the Army, right? We've got the honor guard in every branch out there. And I wish the military would do better at sharing that information with members, because they need to know that they're not forgotten.
Yeah, that's incredible and an unbelievable point. And I think it, you know, just because, again, you've been to Arlington many times, and maybe for some service members, for them to see that visual, it'll be a reminder to them, like, yeah, I'm just not an individual in a uniform. And I'm going to stop there, because the way you said it was perfect. Outstanding. Very, very well said. Many people know the Old Guard from ceremonies, but few understand the level of professionalism required. And you begin explaining that. What was daily life actually like?
It was, you know, you worked from sun up to sundown, and then you usually work beyond sundown. So when you first get into the Old Guard, you're issued a blues uniform, and most people would, like, just their jaws would drop when they realize what we do with that blues uniform. The very first thing we do is we take and we open up the blouse and we rip everything out, all the liners, everything. And then we take it over to the shower and we drench it in water so that it's just soaking. And then we have to press our own uniforms in the Old Guard, and the initial press is the hardest one. For a blouse, it's usually about an 8-hour process, you know, and so you're pressing this blouse for like 8 hours, and then you take it upstairs once it's dry and pressed, and you take a lighter to all of it, and you burn all the strings, all the fuzzies, all that stuff. Then you got to tape it off, and then you take it back down and you do a second press, right? And the same process for the pants, you know, and we built our own metal racks. We went to the hardware store, and we would get the you get the boards that say no trespassing. They're made out of aluminum. So we would buy those, and then we would have to cut out the forms. We would put our own ribbons on it. We'd have to put the racks. I can show you sometime. I mean, the detail that the old guard, and this isn't just the tomb, this is every single person in the old guard goes through this, you know. It's just, so anyway, once you've got your uniform set up and you go out and you do a mission and you spend the day in Arlington or wherever you're doing your mission, when you go home, you're not done for the day. You got to go downstairs, you got to press that uniform, and it's not easy, man. You know, if you put your sleeve on that press just a little bit off, and so the press line isn't, you know, exactly straight, you get what's called a railroad track. That is a no-go, man. Like you either have to fix that or you have to get a new blouse, because that is not okay in the old guard, right? Our standards, and we carry those standards because we have that respect for the people that we're serving, right? And it's important. What we do there is important. So that's the day, man. You wake up, you do PT in the morning. Usually we put on our greens and we would go out and we would do a rehearsal. And then we would come back and we would get our blues, and then we would go and do that mission. And once we're done with that mission, then we'd come back and we'd press our uniforms. And I think during the summer, we usually get done 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And then, you know, as a young soldier, you know, you got to go out and have fun. So we'd go out and we'd have fun that night, and we'd probably get an hour or two of sleep, and then we'd wake up and do PT in the morning, you know, and it was...
I will apologize, Melvin, for complaining about having to get my beret wet and shave it for a couple of times. So
I hate. Oh, you know, I was in the time period when we transferred over from the PC to the beret,
okay.
And it sucked, man. Because like when you're out on that field and you got that beret and there's no shade. Oh my gosh, I had a hard line like straight across my forehead, you know, and it didn't matter if you tried to tan or whatever, that hard line just stayed, man.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't go away. And they were useless, you know, that you can't keep the sun out of your eyes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't like the beret.
Tell us about the honor of providing funeral services at Arlington National Cemetery. If you're able to explain, I get it. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
I guess that is, if there was anything that I could say I miss the most, it's that. The feeling of walking through Arlington with the Army band playing as you're escorting, you know, one of our heroes to their final resting place. There's no way to explain that feeling. I mean, it is. The most powerful feeling I've ever had. Just so honorable and so, you know, even we would do a lot of times. My unit, we had a lot of summer missions, so we wouldn't actually do our details in Arlington until like January, February, right? And so we're walking through wearing these. The shoes in the old guard are wild. Like the soles are wood. You've got a metal plate on the heel and then on the tip, and then you've got metal plates on the inside of the heels so that when you bring your feet together, it claps. And so you're walking through Arlington with metal all over your feet, and there's ice on the ground, right? And it's cold, and those shoes are definitely not great at insulation. Even given all those obstacles, like if I don't think there's anything in my life that I would choose before that.
Yeah.
Like that was just such an amazing experience. It was so powerful, and yeah.
I can't. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's, you had a mission that's invaluable.
Yeah.
You know, and you're doing it no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are your feet now?
I've got hammer toes on both my feet. Yep.
Were there any Arlington ceremonies that still stay with you today?
Yeah. Of course, there's some. My first mission in Arlington, you know, we were on Fort Benning, or not Fort Benning, Fort Myer, and when the casket came out with the casket team of the church, they put it on the caisson, and then the family followed behind, and I was really engaged, right? Like I was watching everything. This was my first mission, and I'm also one of those people that kind of absorbs the energies in a room, you know. And so when the family came out, they were grieving, and it was really it was hard to maintain composure, military composure, while you're standing there, and you know, so that experience stayed with me because I had to learn how to maintain my military composure and an appropriate demeanor, but detach from a lot of those emotions, because we were doing, you know, sometimes 4 funerals in a day, and if I'd have stayed engaged, I think it would have, you know, just destroyed me.
Yeah.
It would have been too much emotional weight. So that stays with me. There's a couple of funny ones, I guess, or semi-funny ones. I remember one time we were lined up. I was in the blues platoon, and the caisson was bringing the casket up, and there was a goose flying over that shit on the top of one of the casket members' hats. And you know, again, you got to maintain that military composure. You're there for a reason, but it's really hard not to laugh when your friend gets shit on, you know.
What was the response?
Not he just kept maintained. Yeah. I kind of wonder how it felt. I don't know if he actually knew what it was, but I'm sure he felt it on his head and didn't know what it was. I'm guessing like maybe he thought it was an acorn or something. I don't know, but it was hard to watch and not laugh.
Yeah.
And then there was another time we were in the newer section of Arlington. Some of those grave sites sink a little bit, you know, and we were marching on to a grave site, and the guy right in front of me went hip deep in a grave. And so I had to march in place, and then I'm like, trying to look that, but you gotta be looking forward. You can't really look down, right? And so I'm marching in place, hoping I'm not sitting over that sinkhole, right? And I'm waiting for my buddy to drag himself out of this grave, and so we went out and around it. But you know, that again, when you got your buddy that falls into a grave, it's maybe a little challenging not to laugh at something like that. But given what we were doing, it's important that we maintain that composure. So those are a few memories that I have.
Yeah, I think it's important. You gotta have some humor in it. You know, not obviously toward the reason why you were there in the mission. But it's you know, again, especially with the emotions you know, that you dealt with. To be able to laugh and smile, that's important.
You gotta find a way to get through it, you know, and finding a way to laugh is, you know, that's the only way you can. Sometimes you gotta laugh at yourself. You gotta laugh at the dumb shit that happens. You know, I mean, otherwise, if you stay just strictly focused, it does start to kind of eat you away.
Man, the goose. I consider that good luck. What do you think? Like, of all the places they can go, and it lands on you,
right?
Buy a lottery ticket or something. What was it like participating in events such as Spirit of America, Twilight Tattoo, Cherry Blossom Parades, and presidential level ceremonies?
Yeah. Well, Twilight Tattoo, so that's a show that we put on right on the front lawn of the White House, the ellipse there. And that was a neat experience if you got the right position, you know. One of the things that I did a couple of times was the S&Ts, or state and territorial flags. And so those guys come out on the field first and they leave last. And you're just standing there with a flag holding it for like an hour and a half. And that sucks. That sucks. But a lot of my missions were right in the beginning of the show. We would have 2 guys dressed in colonial uniforms carrying a 50 caliber musket, 2 on either side of the field. We would run out, and then we would face one another, and then we would level our muskets and we would fire them. And that was the opening of the ceremony. And that was a lot of fun, right? You know, every once in a while you get a kid crying because they got startled or whatever, but mostly it just kind of pushed a bunch of energy into the crowd, you know. So that was I like to joke with, like when I go to an American Legion meeting or something like that, and I'll say, I'll bet I'm the only one in this room that was issued and fired a musket as their service weapon.
How was it shooting those?
It was good as long as my buddies didn't put extra loads of black powder in it. Yeah, there was a show down in we did a Twilight tattoo for the All-American Bowl down in Texas at the Alamo Dome, and that was my role that day, was to go out there and do that. And so when we were lined up, I wasn't paying attention, and my buddies decided to put, I think, 3 or 4 extra loads of black powder in my musket, And so we go running out onto the field, and I'm the one standing, so I level my musket and I pulled the trigger. And as soon as I did, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I glad that this was tight into my shoulder, because it lifted me up. My front foot came off the ground, and then I just sat back down, And it was inside of the dome. It was so loud. But Texas is like a different planet. Like you would, if we did that in DC, like there'd be 100 kids crying in the crowd. When we did that inside of the Alamo Dome in Texas, not one kid cried, not one. I mean, it was unreal.
Did you see were you able to see anyone else there that was with you smirking?
Oh yeah. Those guys, I knew exactly, that was not the normal kick, right? I knew exactly what happened as soon as I pulled the trigger. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. And of course, those guys were back in the chutes, just rolling. They were. Yeah.
Oh, again, that humor. You gotta have those smiles.
Yeah.
You volunteered with the TAPS program every Memorial Day. What drew you to that mission?
Well, honestly, the first time they were looking for a volunteer, nobody in the group wanted to raise their hand, and so I threw my name in the hat. And but after my first time doing TAPS, like that was it, man. I was going to do it every chance I got. That's just such an amazing program, and sitting with the families in Arlington on Memorial Day, that it's just such a powerful experience, and being able to spend time with the kids and take them around DC as a mentor. And that was sort of in the early years of TAPS. And so there were a couple of years where I'd get 2 kids that I would have to mentor. And I learned that putting a backpack on them and then using the loop on the backpack to hold them, that worked great, because they wore themselves out trying to drag me around.
If you can, for those that may not have heard of it before, what is TAPS?
So TAPS stands for Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. So it's military families that lost their loved ones in the military. They come to DC on Memorial Day weekend, and the adults go to different seminars, and the honor guard, so every branch of the honor guard comes there, and they mentor the youth. We take them to the different museums and different sites around DC and spend time with them while their parents are going through the seminar. And then on Memorial Day, when the president gives his speech in Arlington, all those families go and sit there, and so then the honor guard goes and sits with the family in uniform at the same time.
That's amazing. Incredible program organization.
Yeah, they do amazing things.
You hit on it already. Working with Gold Star families, what did that teach you about sacrifice?
I think sometimes in the military, we overlook just how hard it is to be the loved ones that are left back, right? That is an incredibly difficult job, and we forget about that sometimes. And so that really ingrained into me that it wasn't just the soldier that was sacrificing, right? The families, I think, sacrifice more than the soldiers do. The soldiers know what's coming next. The families, they're just waiting and hoping, and I mean, that's so hard. And so, I think in a lot of ways our families sacrifice more than our soldiers do.
Huge shout out to all the family out there, all the supporters. We can't do what we do without it, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, or more times than not, yeah, that job back home, because when we leave, life still goes on.
Yeah.
So absolutely huge shout out to all the families out there. If you've never been told before, know that your support, your service, it is, again, priceless, absolutely priceless. Keep it going. We need it. It is truly appreciated.
That's right.
Looking back, how did those experiences change you? Again, working with the Gold Star families, change you as a soldier and as a man?
That's a hard question.
That's all right.
I mean, so I know I'll get into this a little bit more later, but there's a big circle. You've got the families, you've got the soldier, you've got the mission, and then you've got the people that we lose along the way. And I think that with TAPS, that was just a small piece of that. And I was lucky enough in my service to be able to do that full circle. I trained soldiers for deployment. I gave honors when those soldiers were buried. I dug up the remains when I was in the Pentagon, and I was able to help the families in a small way. So I think it was just part of that bigger circle. That's the best way I can answer that.
The best answer there could be. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you sharing that. Again, we're here on the Preserving Freedom podcast with Army veteran Nate Coward. If you haven't buckled up yet, now is the time to buckle up. Sit in that seat, hold on to those handlebars nice and tight. Here we go. June 9th, 2001. Your life changed forever when you were 16 times, right? Stabbed 16 times during an attempted robbery. Can you walk us through what happened?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I don't think I want to get real deep into it.
Whatever you are comfortable with, my man, always know that.
Yeah, so I was out and about during my free time, and there was a group of like 10 or 15 guys that for some reason decided that they thought I'd be a good target to rob. And I fought back. I hurt them pretty bad, but in the process, they stabbed me 16 times.
You said 10 to 15?
Yeah.
And just you?
It was me and one other guy.
Oh.
Yeah, one other guy. And I mean, we really did. We hurt them bad, but and they ran from us. We didn't run from them. I knew I was getting stabbed. I didn't know how severe it was. And so after they ran away from us, my adrenaline kind of dropped, and I was walking back to the car, and my friend said, we got to go to the hospital. And I'm like, nah, just take me back to the barracks, man. I'm just tired, let's just go back there and I'll get some Band-Aids, whatever. And he goes, no, we got to go to the hospital. And then I got a little annoyed, but I'm like, fine, fuck it, let's go, And so on the way to the hospital, my friend called 911. They told us to pull over and wait for the ambulance to get there. So we did. I was still, coherent and, fine. The ambulance showed up and they immediately they cut all my clothes off, which I was pissed off about. Like, I had nice clothes, and as a private, like,
Yeah.
that was like a half month's pay you just cut off of me, man. And so, but they counted and they're like, we need this person over here. We need that person over here. He's too big. We can't pick him up. And I looked at the guy and I'm like, why don't you just let me walk over there? And he looked at me, he goes, you can walk? And my thought was, it's going to be a long night. That's all I thought. But that's how calm I was, and anyway, they put me on a flat board, and that's when my lungs collapsed. Both my lungs collapsed, and then my heart stopped. And so they ended up med flighting me. Yeah, it was a whole process that night. I woke up the next morning, and it was I don't know what else to say about it. It was a challenging time.
I don't know where to begin to try to.
So ultimately, I was stabbed 16 times. Both of my lungs collapsed. They had to bring me back to life twice. It was pretty traumatic.
No, absolutely. All to get your wallet, right?
Yeah, they didn't get it, but yeah, they tried.
What about the buddy you were with?
He was fine.
Yeah,
he did all right. So his car was pretty messed up with.
Replaceable, right?
Yeah. But and it wasn't from the assault. His car was messed up because I bled everywhere.
Yeah. That's still replaceable, right?
Yeah.
Man. Well, good for him on. You probably your stubbornness a little bit. Just taking me back home just to. I'm sure you have. I don't want to put words in your mouth though, but kind of replay that process of what if I didn't go out. That's good for your battle there.
Yes, sir.
For doing that. As you mentioned, both lungs collapsed. Your heart stopped twice during the medevac. Do you remember those moments at all?
In and out. Yeah.
Obviously, when the heart stopped.
I know that it stopped. Like I remember being loaded because they had to block off the highway to land the med flight, and I remember going into the med flight, but I don't remember lifting off. The next time I remember is on the roof of the hospital. So it's bits and pieces.
Yeah. Where were you when you pulled over? When you called?
In Fairfax, Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how far the hospital was from there where you stopped?
Well, the name of the hospital was Fairfax Nova.
Okay.
So I don't think I was real far, but I don't know exactly how far. Yeah.
I'm just. How long did it take for the first EMT ambulance to arrive?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here. I'm just curious. Where you were.
No, they got to us as fast as they could, and we were driving in that direction already. I don't. I mean, it had to have been maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes.
So much going on.
Yeah.
Wow. Were there times when doctors didn't think that you'd make it?
Oh yeah. There was actually a homicide detective assigned to my case. They thought for sure I wasn't going to make it. Yeah.
I'm just allowing it to absorb. Man, all for a wall. Unbelievable. Again, that's why the last name, it just doesn't see the last name again. Did you any motivation that you had during your recovery? Or what motivated you, if anything?
It was the same thing as basic training. There was just no option for failure. I was going, man. There was no option to fail. It was just, this is what it was.
Again, here at Preserving Freedom Podcast with Army veteran Nathan Coward, stabbed 16 times, all for a wallet, 2 lungs punctured, heart stopped twice. And you admit, they just missed didn't they just miss your...
Yeah, they missed my liver by 1/32 of an inch.
Man.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky. And when I got to the hospital, they were worried that they had punctured my diaphragm. I was lucky enough that they didn't puncture my diaphragm. That would have been life-ending for sure. Yeah, the emergency staff at Fairfax Nova, I can't say enough good about them. I mean, I should have been dead. They saved me.
Incredible. Well done. Fairfax, where again was it?
Fairfax Nova.
Fairfax Nova. Outstanding job. Outstanding job saving my brother here. He is able today to share his story with me. That's another whole titled job. I can't imagine, the EMT, nurses, doctors, surgeon, all that stuff. One, because I'm 6th grade smart maybe, but just so much credit for them. Not to get off topic here, but when a shout out's due, I like to give a shout out.
Absolutely, they deserve it.
Incredible.
They really do.
Thank you for sharing what you did. But for all of you, hold on. How did it feel to return to full duty only days before. 2 days, correct? If I remember.
So my memory is a little bit fuzzy, right? I believe it was 2 days. It may have been 3, but right in that neighborhood, right? Yeah, 2 or 3 days before 9/11. Yeah.
So return to full duty just days before September 11th. First, how did it feel returning back to duty?
Oh, I was so excited. So before I got stabbed, my best 2-mile run time was about 12 minutes and 15 seconds. And so I'd only had about 90 days to recover with both my lungs collapsed. And so the first thing I did was a run, and I was able to do 2 miles in 13 and a half minutes, and I was just on cloud 9, man. It was like, for the old guard, we've got PT standards, right? We've got to be at least, I think it was 270 back then. If you didn't hit 270, you were on remedial PT.
Okay.
And like 90 days after getting stabbed 12 times, I was still above 270. I didn't have to do remedial PT. I was pumped, man. Like it was, I was back on my mission to be in that, that airborne, air assault ranger, pathfinder badass. That's what I thought,
Fairfax Nova Hospital, what did you inject in this guy? Man, 90 days after you're back from, I just got stabbed 16 times, got out of the hospital, returned to full duty. I'm going to go run. So if there's any of you out there that are hesitant on running, and I'm with you, remember, it can always be worse. All right? Excuses sound best to those who make them. All right? And I'm guilty too. So that is incredible, I mean, incredible. But as I said again, hold on. What was the atmosphere like inside the old guard as the attacks on September 11th unfolded?
Well, so I was on Fort McNair, right in DC. The rest of the company was over on Fort Myer at the time, rehearsing for a ceremony. I was on CQ, just watching the phones and whatever.
And if I may, between the two, distance-wise, how far are we talking here? For those that may not know.
Well, you got to cross the Potomac. Drive time, 15, 20 minutes, probably only like 5 miles, but
okay.
It's like running through sand in DC, right? And so I'm sitting there, quiet building, nobody's in it, and we're not allowed to listen to the radio or watch TV. So I'm reading a book and just manning the phones, and all of a sudden my lieutenant came flying in. And it was like, you ever watch Seinfeld?
Yes.
You know how Kramer comes into a room and he's like running sideways, So that's what my lieutenant was doing, right? And he was just, he was out of his mind. And he's like, lock this down, lock that down, get a count on this. And I started laughing at him. And I'm like, sir, slow down. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, right? And he goes, we're under attack. And it was weird because the radio in DC was saying that Washington was hit, the Capitol was hit, like we were, the whole place was up in fire if you were listening to the radio at all. And so as soon as he said that, I ran, I locked down the building, I got a count on the accountability for everybody in the building. And then it was just waiting for the guys over on Fort Myer to get back to us. And so the guys on Fort Myer, they started coming, and once they hit the bridge over the Potomac, there was a suspicious package, like a box or something. So the bus driver didn't want to drive over the bridge. So the whole busload of my guys had to get off, run past that suspicious package with all of their gear. And so it was, I'm guessing maybe 2.5 mile run. And they did, man, in their dress blues and in their dress shoes and all that shit. They ran all the way back to Fort McNair. And as soon as they got back, it was like, everybody huddled around the CQ desk. We were waiting for any information. We were told that we were deploying, get our battle rattle ready to go. And so everybody did, man. And at first, my platoon sergeant's like, you know what, Nate, maybe you should stay back, right? Like and I'm like, no. I'm like, dude, there is no way you're going to force me to stay on this desk right now, right? And so I begged him and I said, look, I was released back to full duty. I've got no limitations. Let me go. you know, and so he did. And so we loaded up on deuce and a halfs and we went over to the Pentagon. So, but I don't know what it was like on Meyer, because most of the regiment is on Fort Meyer. There's only one company that's on Fort McNair. That was mine, and so I can only say what it was like for us. Yeah.
I'm still trying to think of the 2.5 mile run in dress blues.
Yeah.
And for those of you who, I
don't know if it was.
But
yeah, I don't know if it was dress blues or greens, because I know they were doing a rehearsal, but they had their dress uniforms. That if they weren't wearing them, they were carrying
and everything.
Oh yeah,
And the dress suit with the medal and the.
Oh yeah, yep.
I don't know how to reach that. Yeah. I feel like I should go out and run right now. Man, did anything come of that suspicious pack?
No, it was nothing. But they were being. I mean, obviously, with what was going on, they had to be cautious. So yeah.
Man.
Yeah, eventually it was cleared.
So again, 2 to 3 days after being released back to full duty, September 11th happens.
I gotta say, Jason, like, the person that I feel worst about is my mom. My poor mom, you know, she had just let me go back to the military, right? And I'm only 20 years old at this point. And so I got stabbed 16 times. My mom came out there, brought me back to Wisconsin after I was stabbed. And then 3 days after, I go back to DC. Now she's got to worry about, these attacks and stuff. And I can't even imagine what my mom was going through at that point, right? Like, it was hardest on her. And that's what I mean when I say, like, the family sacrifice sometimes is harder than the actual soldier. You know, I knew where I was. I knew, the condition I was in. My mom didn't, right? My mom knew that I was still recovering.
Yeah.
That's what she knew. And now I'm under threat again. And
you were at, like, as the whole world watched, so many, depending what station, channel you listen to, all the different news. And I can't imagine.
Yeah.
What a great soul. I hope you spoiled her, right? Moms are just, they're one of a kind. Yeah, but you're exactly right. As far as that family service, we need to, important not to overlook it. Very important not to overlook it. Alpha Company became one of the primary rescue, recovery, and debris removal units at the Pentagon. What do you remember about arriving to the scene?
On 9/11, I think a lot of people thought, for me, it was just like how perfectly blue the sky was, and standing outside of that big hole, it was surreal. It felt like Independence Day with Will Smith had just come out, right? And that's what it felt like, man. I felt like I was in a movie, and it felt like it was Independence Day or something. It just didn't feel real. It was just surreal.
The sights, the sounds, however you're able, if you're able to, or memories from the Pentagon recovery operation, what remains with you today?
I remember early on in the recovery, when we were still taking, like, the big rocks out and stuff like that. So you had that big open area in the Pentagon, and we had to, the engineers had to come in and block up that flooring so that, it would stabilize or whatever. And once that was up, then we could go in and we could start removing the concrete. And they had these little bobcats. I don't know who was driving them. It wasn't somebody from the old guard. We were the grunts, right? We were doing the work. And we were loading up the bucket of one of these bobcats. And I picked up this huge chunk of concrete. And, part of putting it in there is like trying to compact it so you can get more, right? And so I had this big piece of concrete, and I lifted it up and I slammed it down, and the bobcat started tipping forward. And so we got it pushed back or whatever. And then the driver is yelling at me like, "Don't do that again," And most of our efforts were at night, right? We were every single night. We were the unit that did all the nights, and we were on complete lockdown. So when we weren't at the Pentagon, we were in transit, and transit sometimes meant that we were driving through different areas in DC to show a military presence. And then we would go back to the barracks, and we weren't allowed to leave the barracks. Like, we were locked down, and we wouldn't get, I think at most we would be there like 8 hours. And then once we were done at the barracks, we would go straight back to the Pentagon. And, but it was always night shifts. And so sleep deprivation became a real issue. I haven't talked to a single person that I served with that can say confidently exactly how long we were in that building. I know that we were there from September 11th until all of the debris was removed. I know that I remember at one point, we would remove debris and then they would spread it out in the parking lot. And then we would have to go and crawl through that and look for any remains or anything they didn't want going to the dump, right? We were doing that next to cadaver dogs, right? And talking to the handlers for the cadaver dogs, they're like, yeah, the life expectancy of the cadaver dogs is like 4 or 5 years usually. And I'm like, oh, great. And I'm crawling right next to them doing the same exact job. Awesome. So, and there was one night, I think we were up on the second floor and we had cleared most of the debris, but when the plane hit, the fuel shot down the hallways, and so it blew out a lot of the office dividers. And so we had to go up there and we had to remove a lot of the debris and take it back into a different area. And the whole area was just lit with like a string of lights down the hallway. So it was kind of poorly lit. And right on the edge of the blast zone, there was a desk that we had to move. And it was an officer, and I hope she survived. I don't know. But I looked at her desk, and on her desk, she had this picture of her family, and it was a huge family. I mean, there must have been 50 or 60 people in that. And until that point, it was, there were no faces. We found pieces, and that first night we had to do some whole body recovery, but beyond that, it was, just not, there was no faces to it. There was you could detach from it pretty easy. But when I saw that picture of her and her family, and I knew I was moving her desk and it was right on the edge of that blast zone, that was when it really kind of hit, that the reality of it, yeah. I guess, like I said, I really hope that she survived. I don't have a clear memory of what her face looked like, and there was no names and whatever, but I genuinely hope that she survived. Yeah. Yeah, because that was a huge family, and to think about the pain that would have brought that huge family, that was hard.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Here again with Nate Coward, Preserving Freedom podcast, Army veteran. I think I don't want to say it's easy to see, your reaction, but if anything else you want to share on how those experiences affect you emotionally. I don't want to say it's a hard one to beat with what you just explained, with that, seeing that family picture there, and one can only imagine. You just respond to the Pentagon being hit.
I guess there was a funny time in there, I guess, and it sounds a little bit dark, but like we were talking earlier, sometimes you got to find humor in the darkest places. Otherwise, you just eat yourself up. And so that in that area on the second floor, we had that string of lights down the center, and we were taking this material and we were putting it in different offices. And so when you went into the office, you could see in the front part, but it was like pitch black in the back. Okay. And I was with 2 other guys, and one of the guys looked at us and he goes, "It'd be messed up and he had a dark sense of humor, and we're like, what? And he goes, if a charred up body come running out of that at us, right? And I thought, man, you know, I just thought, man, that's dumb, you know. But the other guy that was with us got super creeped out by it, and so just a few minutes later, there was this wooden crate that was laid on its side, and we picked it up, and it made like a creak noise. Well, the guy that got creeped out, he dove out the door like there was a charred up body coming after him, and then he realized we were still in the room, and so he spins around real quick, and he gets in a good fighting stance, you know, and he's ready to box with this charred up body. And you know, yeah, so that was a little bit of humor in there, but hopefully nobody takes offense to that. But that's, you know, sometimes you just gotta have those moments where you let yourself go, and maybe part of us laughing so hard at it was the sleep deprivation, right? Like, and just the gravity of everything we were doing.
Yeah, I can't imagine. There's a lot of so much that you're dealing with and going on. And
I'll tell you another memory is especially early on in the recovery. You know, when we would go back to the barracks, you know, we were exhausted, but the first thing we would do is we would try and catch the news and see what was happening in New York. And whenever we would get news that somebody was being recovered from the rubble up there, it was like a lightning bolt went through us, man. And when we got back there, it was just like, you know, shit was flying, man. We were if there was anybody in there, if there was anything in there, we were getting to it, and we were going to get to it as fast as we possibly could. And so, you know, that was a huge memory for me, and just realizing how much motivation we got from those folks in New York too.
That's incredible. Oh, like, just got me all excited. Like, just the fighting spirit of our men and women.
And you know, so we would be on the back of these deuce and a halves, right, open top. And when we were going back and forth on these missions, the excitement of the people, the civilians on the road, they would honk and they would wave. And honestly, there were a couple of girls that lifted up their shirts for us, right? And like, you know, the way that we saw the country come together after that is just, I wish I could see more of that. I haven't seen it since.
Preach, my man, 100%. Yeah.
But that was, if there was anything good in that, that was it. Was the way that our country came together, and unconditionally, man. It didn't matter color, race, political affiliation. It just didn't matter, man. We all came together, and it was amazing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. See, America, that's proof. You know it. A lot of you have been through it. We can do it. Let's do it. No better day than today's start. So, Nate, thank you so much for sharing that. Man, again, a day, you know, and a reminder to all of us, you know, we promise we never forget. You know, and we'll get a little bit more coming up on the 25th, you know, and call it anniversary of September 11th. But we promise America, we never forget. So, was there a particular moment during the recovery efforts, and you may have already spoke upon it, that changed your perspective on life?
I don't think I was thinking much when I was doing that, man. I mean, I knew that my country was depending on me. I knew that they had entrusted me with something, you know, enormous. And I think that's the only thing I was thinking about, brother, was just doing what I need to do. You know what I mean?
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, realizing you're part of something bigger than yourself as an individual. That's, couldn't have answered it better. How did your mission evolve in the days and weeks after the attacks?
Yeah, so, you know, initially we were there for rescue. It became apparent there were no survivors found in the Pentagon. And it was pretty apparent in a short matter of time that we weren't going to find any And so our mission shifted from rescue to recovery very quickly. And then once we had found as many remains as we could, then the mission shifted to debris removal. And once we were done with the debris removal, then we went on different security missions. And so we provided security at Fort Myer, and that was absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
Like the shifts that we had to work were so weird, and it was just the weird thing was, though, once we got done with the Pentagon, so we were on complete lockdown that entire time. We weren't allowed to go anywhere but the Pentagon and our barracks. And so when we got done with the Pentagon, we were finally allowed to go out, and we went out to a bar in Georgetown called Rhinos. And it was like a favorite hangout. And we were sitting in the bar, and this was our first night out. We were still exhausted. Like, we put so much work in, and so we were torn down, man. We were sucking. But we had to go out, man. We had to, and so we were sitting in the bar, and I remember the national anthem came on the TV. And so everyone in my unit, we immediately take off our hats and we put our hand over our hearts, and we're paying our respects. And it was challenging because looking around, everyone there was already trying to forget. And so, you try and forget the traumatic stuff. I'm not saying that they were trying to forget, the sacrifice of that day, but they were trying to forget the trauma. They were trying to move past it. And for us, we had just been digging through that shit the day before. And so it created a lot of uncomfortable feelings, right? Some challenging feelings that I had to work through. There was no welcome home, right? There was no getting off the plane and, whether you're a Vietnam veteran that got apples and shit thrown at you, or if you're, somebody else that was welcomed back by those same Vietnam veterans, whatever it was, we didn't have any of that. It was just sort of, okay, now you're normal and you're back to, doing this stuff. And so, we went from that, and then we went into the security role afterwards. And then, we progressed. We had to deploy to go help train up a Ranger battalion for deployment. And so it was just one thing after the other. Mm-hmm. And that's how it kind of evolved, I guess.
Yeah, that transition. And as you mentioned, and we're going to get into it, there's that it's important. You didn't have much time at all to think about any of that stuff because you were on to that next mission. Yeah. What was it like providing security throughout the capital region during that time? I'm interested.
I mean, I guess I feel like it was more of a show than it was a reality, right? We had Humvees with Mark 19s and empty baskets on it, right? And so it's like, anybody that's familiar with military equipment, when they look at that Humvee, first of all, you're in the middle of Washington, D.C., and you've got a Mark 19, a fully automatic grenade launcher. Like, you're not going to blow up the neighborhood, right? So it was more of a show than it was a reality, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
But I think that show did help provide people comfort, and maybe, with infantry soldiers, I'm, I love my brothers, but not having any rounds in that Mark 19 was a good idea.
I would assume you'd be sharing a different story.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just, and for the, infantrymen or women, that's, man, you're just playing with their mind, right? Here's a Mark 19, but you have nothing, or those blank adapters.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
to continue, you experienced some extraordinary events. You just obviously 9/11, the attack on the Pentagon, the anthrax scare, DC sniper, and even the DC arsonist. What was it like serving in Washington during such a turbulent period? And if you can, anything to share with any of those?
So I look back on it, and I feel like it was war right here in America. So shortly after we got out of the Pentagon, our company, they found anthrax in our mailroom. And so all of us had to take the anthrax vaccine. We didn't get a choice in it. It was just something we had to do. And so we were part of that whole scare. And then with the DC sniper, like that really tied people down. I was dating a girl that lived in the neighborhood of one of the Hobby Lobbies where people were killed. And so, she was afraid to come visit me. She had to get gas, right? People were getting shot at gas stations and Hobby Lobbies and all kinds of crazy shit. And it really kind of paralyzed the area quite a bit. People were afraid to go out and about because they didn't know how it was happening or where it was coming from. And then with the DC arsonist, most people don't know about the DC arsonist. That never really made national news, but he was one of the most prolific arsonists in the history of the United States. He was convicted of over 350 arsons, right? This guy, he would walk up to a door in the middle of the night, and he would have a squeeze bottle full of flammable liquid, and he would squirt it underneath the door, and then he would spray the door with it, and then he'd light it on fire and walk away in the middle of the night, when people are sleeping. And, so these things, they paralyzed the DC area. But during that time period, DC had the highest murder rate per capita in the nation. It was, I think, number 1 or number 2 for STD rates. It had the second or third worst traffic in the country. Like, it was not exactly a great place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know about the DC arsonist. I wasn't not too familiar with it, but that.
Yeah.
Oh, cowards. Man, to spray under when people are sleeping, families are sleeping. How do soldiers cope with the constant uncertainty and heightened security environment in DC during those times?
We lean on each other. We support one another. After we got out of the Pentagon, we were on the security details on Fort Myer, and that was when my grandfather got sick. And I was struggling with that. He was my favorite person. And if it wasn't for the support of my brothers, I don't know that I would have made it through.
Yeah.
So it was leaning on one another. It was supporting. I remember one night I was so upset about my grandpa, and so I went out and I just got lit up, man. I had to let loose and get drunk, and we had security the very next morning, and I didn't have any time to recover, and so my buddy Mike and a couple other guys in my unit, they covered for me. They let me sleep it off inside the trailer. They knew like how bad I was wrestling with it, but if I didn't have that support, that's how we deal with it, man. We got to count on each other.
Yeah, that camaraderie that you build in the military, it's not to be sarcastic or disrespectful to any other job title or group or whatever, but it's hard to beat it.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat
you can't do it without it.
No.
Without that support, man, that it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We can't do that without one another, period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As an EIB instructor, expert infantry badge,
Mm-hmm.
how rewarding was it to help young soldiers achieve standards you had worked so hard to earn yourself?
Yeah, it was, so the expert infantryman's badge is a series of like 40 different level 1 infantryman tasks. So you got land nav, you've got your road march. I think it's like a 12-mile road march, and then you've got to learn all these different tasks, and you get 3 chances to get it wrong in 40 stations. If you get it wrong the third chance, you're done. It's out. So it's a very, very difficult thing to achieve. When I went through it, the first year I was lucky enough to earn, I don't want to brag, but I was good enough to get my EIB.
Proud,
yeah, I got my EIB the first time around. And, so we went around with a squad, so 7 guys, and we went to each station and we would get trained on these different things. And every single station, they go, "Coward, I'll bet you got a lot of shit for that in basic, didn't you?" And it got so bad, it was literally every single station. So we got to the 40th station, and I swear every person in my group was just sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting to see if it was going to be 100%. But it was rewarding, man, because the first year I taught MBC, right, and it was. I can't remember the time limit. It was something like you had to get it on in 12 or 15 seconds or something like that. Get your mask on and cleared. And, training those guys on how to do that, I knew that if they were ever going to be hit with a nerve agent or some other agent, they had the training and they were trained well enough that it wasn't a thinking process. This was going to be a natural reaction. They were going to be able to put that on and boom, they were good, right? So there's a lot of reward in that. And then the second year, I trained guys how to employ an M21 anti-claymore mine, right? And so that was a lot of fun, right? You think about blowing shit up and that sort of thing. And so I enjoyed it. I was pretty good at being an instructor, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
So
very good. Yeah. You also instructed the regimental orientation program. What did you enjoy most about mentoring new soldiers?
Yeah, that one was so it's a 3-week program, and it's called ROPE, by the way.
Okay.
And so in the infantry, man, we can't spell. That's why it's ROP, But it was really rewarding because it was my job to maintain the standard of the old guard, right? If I loosened my standards and I didn't uphold those new members to that standard and show them exactly what the old guard was expecting of them, then that's the first step in going downhill, right? So it was a huge honor. I think some of my students, maybe they don't have kind memories of me. I was sort of the bad cop, right? Like, I was the guy that if there was a class messing up, I took them for the day, and they figured it out by the end of the day, right? And so maybe some of my students don't remember me in a kind way, but I'm sure there's many drill sergeants that could say the same thing. I think that was sort of my role, right? Was to give this really stern impression of what the old guard is and make sure that those standards were held to, strongly.
You say you probably have many few, whatever, that don't have great memories, but I would almost be willing to say and truly believe that the other way around too. There's probably many that thank you for maintaining that high standard.
Yeah. Well, I know there was one kid and he was from Dodgeville, Wisconsin, and I didn't realize it, but he had this thing where his lip kind of looked like he had a dip in, right? And so during one of my classes, I looked over and I'm like, "You're sitting in my class with a dip in. Have you lost your damn mind?" And so I smoked him, right? Like I had him at Ready 1 for a long time. And he went through all of it, right? And after the class, he comes over and he's like, I was a specialist. He goes, "Specialist, just so you know, this isn't a dip." And I'm like, "Oh, shit." And so I said, "Good training, huh?" But it earned my respect, right? Because he did what he was supposed to. He knew what the standard was. He wasn't combative in the moment. He just addressed me afterwards. And that made me respect him. And when President Reagan died, I actually saw him on the casket team, right? And so that really made me feel good. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could have taken that so many different ways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it was my mess up, man.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I was definitely wrong in that moment, and he handled it perfectly, man. You know. So, yeah.
You suffered another collapsed lung during pre-ranger training. How difficult was that setback?
You know, when I was getting ready to go, it was the only. So I was preparing. I was training to go to pre-ranger, and pre-ranger is before you actually go to ranger school. And so I was training, and it was the only run I had ever fallen out of in my entire military career. I was running with them, and you know, they were doing that speed up, slow down shit, you know, really breaking you off. And all of a sudden, like, I started coughing up blood, and I was really challenged. And so I said to the RI, I'm like, man, I gotta stop. And he looked at me, he goes, okay, give me your shoe. And I'm like, my shoe? Yeah, give me your shoe. Okay, so I took my shoe off and I handed it to him, and he ran off. He's like, stay right here. And so they ran down and they went around the commissary, and then they came back and they got me. You know, you never leave a man behind, and that's exactly what they did. So I had enough time to rest, and I put my shoe back on, and I was able to finish that run. And so that was leading up to pre-ranger. And then when I got to pre-ranger, you know, my thought was going into it, you know, I may not be able to do this. I don't know, but I want to try, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life going, what if, right? And so I guess it wasn't a huge shock when I partially collapsed my lower lobe of my left lung, and it was painful, but it wasn't like life-threatening.
Getting stabbed 16 times.
Right. It wasn't life-threatening. Like, I didn't have to rush to the hospital. In fact, I didn't even know that that's what happened. I just knew that when I was doing push-ups, I couldn't breathe. Yeah. You know, and so I'm like in the rest position with my ass way up in the air, you know, and the RI comes over and he's like, why aren't you doing push-ups, you know? And he starts screaming at me, and I'm like, I can't breathe. And they knew my story already. You know, the RIs knew what had happened. And so they rushed me off, and I went to the meds. They had to put me on oxygen and stuff. And they said, well, you know, you can continue if you want. And I said, at this point, I'm not going to damage my body anymore. I know that I'm at my limit, you know. And so I was able to finish off that training cycle. I just played the bad guy, so it wasn't as hard on me. I didn't get smoked or whatever, you know. But I was able to at least participate in it to the end of that training cycle. But yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised. I went there because I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any doubts, right? For the rest of my life, I didn't say, well, what if I would have tried? Would I have been able to?
Yeah.
You know, so that's what it was.
Did that injury change the trajectory of your military career?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was that injury, but I think more than that injury, it was actually my exposure at the Pentagon. I ended up getting a lung disease that I wasn't aware of at the time. That it wasn't diagnosed until 2007. I had been complaining of difficulty breathing, getting short of breath, coughing up blood, and these things, you know, since the spring of 2002. It wasn't an issue until I went into the Pentagon. I was recovering very, very well. But again, I only had like 2 or 3 days to know the difference. You know what I mean? And so, but I think that more than anything, it was my exposure in the Pentagon. It was the issues that it created in my lungs. But my lungs were far more susceptible because of the injuries that I had prior to that exposure. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
They tell you it's not service related?
Yeah. So I ended up having to go through a medical board, and when I was medically retired from the military. First, I was placed on temporary disability retirement list. They said that my disabilities hadn't stabilized enough for them to accurately assess.
And this is in 2004, correct?
Yeah, 2000.
The temporary.
So I had enlisted for 3 years, and my ETS date was in June of 2003. So when I was going through, so I'd finished my full enlistment, and I was going through the ETS process. And when I went to Walter Reed, they recommended that I do a medical board because of my complicated medical history during my service. And so that's what I did. And I had to extend 8 months beyond my original enlistment to do that. Where were we going with that? Excuse me.
When I mentioned, I was joking, not at your situation, but just, how much you have to fight it being service connected.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So when I was going through the medical board, my primary complaint, my number one complaint, was my breathing. I couldn't breathe. I was coughing up blood. And what I was told by the medical professionals is that it was psychological. It was PTSD. So my medical retirement from the U.S. Army doesn't include any issues with breathing at all. It's PTSD, it's lower back problems, and there's something else in there.
Yeah.
But they didn't acknowledge my breathing issues at all. And it wasn't until I kept on going back to the VA and saying, hey, look, I'm having issues here. When it gets humid out, I get lightheaded, I can't breathe, all of these issues. And finally they started testing me, and then that's when they discovered that I had sarcoidosis. And with the sarcoidosis, you go through flare-ups where your lungs get really inflamed and it's hard to breathe and it's uncomfortable. And so I suspect that when I was having those issues in the military, I was probably having a flare-up of sarcoidosis. And that was the issue. But maybe it was so early on that I didn't have granulomas. Is usually, they're like little grains that collect in your lungs. And maybe early on in the process, I didn't have a lot of granulomas for them to discover at that point. So maybe that's how it got missed or didn't get diagnosed. I don't know. But I was told that it was psychological and not physical for a lot of years.
It couldn't be all that bad stuff you were breathing in at the Pentagon.
No.
I'm no medical professional. It's just frustrating at times.
Yeah. I mean, we slept outside of the Pentagon. Like, we had those tents that were up there. And so when we would, in between our shifts, we would actually have our rucksacks. We would lay back on our rucksacks and we would take a nap right there on the ground. So like where all of the nasty firefighting chemicals had been and everything else, that's where we were sleeping.
Man. What was the emotional impact of being permanently medically retired in 2008, correct?
Yeah. So, when I was younger, I was a very physical person. I played football. I'm a big guy. I didn't have to depend so much on my mental capacity, right? And being so young, it was a real challenge to go from being such a physical person to having to rely on, my mental ability. And it was a huge shift. It was one, I didn't want to acknowledge that at 24 years old, I was no longer physically able to do the things that I was just a couple of years ago, right? I didn't want to let the people around me know that was the case. I wanted to act like I was perfectly fine, and I wanted them to accept me like I was perfectly fine. So there was a lot of challenge in all of that, right? Accepting at that age that I was completely disabled, and then trying to figure out how to work the rest of my life at such a young age. Like there was a lot to figure out.
Yeah. Did you have any, had it not been for obviously the medical retirement, did you have any kind of drive to extend, to stay in, or were you like 3 years done?
Well, my
Prior
plan,
to all this happened.
yeah, my plan was like I wanted to be airborne, I wanted to be ranger, and I wanted to do Halo and Pathfinder, and I was even thinking about SEER school, right? Like I really wanted to. When I do something, I go all in, man. Like that's just who I am, and so that's what I wanted to do, and that was my mission. That's why I went to the old guard. You know, when they recruited me, I could have gone anywhere. I could have gone to any unit. I could have done any MOS, but I looked at the old guard, and this was, you know, during peacetime, and I said, you know, that is my best opportunity. You know, the old guard is the most disciplined unit in the United States Army, and that's where I need to be. You know, and so yeah, it was crushing to have to accept that, you know, these plans that I had made for myself are no longer viable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The curveballs life may throw at us.
That's right.
All right. We're here with Nick Howard, Army veteran, finishing up here, and it's an incredible story in the 3 years, 4 years, possibly 8 years altogether. You know, with going through the medical retirement or the medical retirement process. What did serving with the old guard teach you about honor?
It's like right in the name, right? Like, yeah, you know, when I went to the old guard, that was my first duty unit, right? And so when I got out of there, I had this idea in my head that everywhere else was the same way. And as I've gotten older, I've realized just how much different the standard is in the old guard. Not to take anything away from any other unit, right? We've got amazing military units all over the world, and any unit that's serving is amazing, right? But the level of leadership and duty that is in that unit is just on another level. And we didn't really have shit bags, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, that's as much as I can say about that, and the honor of doing it. You know, I was a soldier in one of the most disciplined, structured units that had just an incredible duty to our country in more ways than one, right? With Arlington and 9/11 and, you know, presidential security and everything else that the old guard does. It was an honor of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds cliche, but
No, not at all.
I don't know when I'll ever get another opportunity like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, it was definitely my honor.
Yeah. Love it. Great response. Great response. What did working at Arlington National Cemetery teach you about sacrifice?
Oh man, yeah, right. Like, the families, again, you know, that soldier, when he gives his life, that's the end of his sacrifice, right? The families, though, they've got to live with that sacrifice. And, you know, that's, I think, the biggest, strongest lesson that I got from that was, you know, yeah, if I get killed in war, or if I get killed, you know, in a terrorist attack or whatever it might be, you know, my suffering is over, but my family has to live with that shit for the rest of their lives. You know, and that's a weight that they've got to bear on my behalf. You know, I think that's the strongest lesson that I learned doing that. Yeah.
What did 9/11 teach you about service and duty?
We're getting into all the lessons, huh?
Yep.
Let's see. 9/11. 9/11 taught me about unity, about coming together as a country, right? I wrote an article last year, and one of the things that I said in it was that, you know, in the aftermath of 9/11, we had countless numbers of fire departments, EMS, police, and we had every branch of the military come together and work seamlessly at the same mission. And I mean, they were perfect, right? I mean, you talk about the NYPD or NYFD, those guys' official response time to 9/11 was 5 seconds, right? And I mean, the way that the country came together and just seamlessly, perfect. That would be the biggest lesson, I think, from 9/11 is that it's possible, right? Before 9/11, I don't think anybody could imagine that what we did that day was possible.
Yeah.
And it is.
Absolutely. Let's not wait for another tragic event for that to happen again.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Love that response. Absolutely. If you could sit down with that young soldier arriving at Fort Benning back in 2000, what advice would you give him?
Don't do anything differently. I don't think I'd change anything about my service whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't say shit to him. I'd be like, dude, just do it. You'll live.
Yeah. Short and sweet, but so impactful. Absolutely. When you think about brothers and sisters who never got the opportunity to come home, and I think you mentioned it a lot with family, what goes through your mind?
We can't leave them behind. We can't forget them. We need to do everything in our power still today to bring them home. The state of Wisconsin has the UWPOWMIA project, which goes overseas and it digs up the remains of our service members. It does DNA testing, and if they're from Wisconsin or any other state, they repatriate those remains. And I think that we as a nation, we need to put more into that mission. These are our brothers and sisters, our family members, and we are talking about families that have never gotten closure, never been able to have a site for them to go and just pay their respects. And so that's what I think about when we talk about that.
Yeah. Another amazing, that's incredible for the UWPOWMIA.
Yep.
Yeah. And that closure, that's, anything you can get back.
And it's not just the families, it's the communities, right? I mean, these people were willing to put their lives on the line for their country. That is a huge loss to that community. That person could be in that community, running a business, taking care of local kids, whatever it might be. That community lost a lot. That was a big sacrifice, not just from the family, but the community as a whole, right? And to bring that back and give that community closure is important.
You're good. I love it.
It's not about being good, man.
Well,
Those are things I feel in my heart, right?
Yep. That you saw me do. I did that too, and I know your responses are true and raw and truly right from the heart, and that's why. Could use a better word than good, but truly
I just want to be clear, right? Yeah, I'm not putting on a show here.
If this microphone was connected to every American listening right now, what message would you want them to hear?
Love your neighbor. Right now, we don't love our neighbors. We need to love our neighbors. As simple as that.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about our firefighters, our police, our EMS, our correctional officers. You think about, our social workers. Our neighbors are heroes in our local community. These are the people that keep our communities safe, that keep our children safe. And right now, if their opinion differs in just the smallest way, we don't love them. And it doesn't matter. We got to love our neighbors.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Once again, short and sweet, but so much power behind it. Yeah. Love the response. After surviving an attack that, let's face it, probably should have killed you. I don't wish that, but incredible what you went through. helping recover the Pentagon after 9/11, honoring our nation's heroes at Arlington, and ultimately sacrificing your own military career through injury. What does it mean to you to have served?
I guess it means, for me, I serve because I love my country, and I believe in our collective mission as a country. I believe in democracy and loving our neighbors, and that's what it means to me.
We gotta get you a megaphone. We're just gonna drive through cities.
You know, honestly, Jason, usually I don't like telling my story, and I don't like being in front of groups of people. I'm not. But when you asked me to do this, I thought that it would be a good opportunity to share my story, and I was excited to talk to you about it. And that's kind of abnormal, and I don't understand why I was excited, but I like you as a person, and we've worked together with the honor flight and everything else, and so I thought maybe it was a good opportunity. But typically, I don't enjoy getting in front of people, so don't give me that megaphone, man. I'm good without it.
Who knows? It might be something that you mentioned it earlier about going to the pre-ranger training and going to range. You want to live life knowing because you tried. Who knows?
I had to testify a couple of years ago to Congress about healthcare for 9/11 military 9/11 first responders. The most nervous I have ever been in my entire life. People say they were dripping sweat. Like, I was a comedy sketch, man. Like, I had sweat just like pouring down. Like, my sleeve had a stream of sweat coming out of it. Like, I was the most nervous. I really don't like getting in front of people. I don't. That's. Yeah. If you were to ask me, what is the most torturous idea? Usually it's getting in front of people and talking.
It is for many.
Yeah.
You get out of practice, right? Practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes permanent, just my opinion. But I believe it or not, I was very, very similar to you. I remember in high school, like, hey, we have a book report next week. I was terrified from the moment I knew about the book report till probably an hour after I gave the book report. Heck no. Yeah. Now you can't get me to shut up. So, you were chosen for an incredible retreat with Missions of Honor here in Northeast Wisconsin, coming up with the 25th anniversary of 9/11. We got a few months, obviously, until that happens, but, random selection, you were one of them. I can't wait for you to have that experience. Again, it honors our GWAT veterans, because you've said it many times amazingly, how we all came together. And when you look at it from that service aspect of it, our FDNY, NYPD, Port Authority, and those from Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, we all came together as one. And you realize that connection, and you realize the commonality that's military service, FDNY, NYPD, all those that you have together. But a couple months until flight happens, I guess, tell me, what are your feelings right now, leading up to this truly a guaranteed great time with, again, Missions of Honor and Freedom to Liberty Retreat number 5.
Yeah. So first thing is I'm nervous, right? I'm very, very nervous.
Perfectly normal.
The thing that makes me nervous is the emotions. It's going to be the 25th anniversary. I've never been to New York to where the towers fell. That's not. I want to. It's always been on the bucket list, but the emotions of it have kind of made me slow walk that ambition, right? And so I'm very nervous, just because I know it's going to be an emotional experience. If I end up on TV, it's probably going to be because I'm crying like a baby. Every 9/11, my normal day is I wake up in the morning. I find out. Well, usually I'll find out the night before, but if I haven't, I'll find where the names are being read. And it's a lone thing. Like I don't invite people over. I'm there by myself, and I listen to the names being read in New York and in Pennsylvania and in DC, and I cry. Like that is literally, I just cry. Listening to the families talk about their loved ones as they read the names is it's inspiring, but it's also very emotional, right? And so that's the first thing. I'm nervous about that emotion. But the second thing I think about is just, the honor of being a special guest of the New York Fire Department. I think of guys like Louis Alvarez, who testified to Congress the day before his 69th round of chemo to get us the health care and the benefits that the 9/11 first responders. I think about just the legacy of all of those guys and the amazing things that they did and the horrific things that they had to bring their community through. And so the honor of being their guest is the second, and hopefully they don't take offense to that, but that's the second thing that I think about.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. So
I can't wait for you to get it. And I don't know, but I feel it may be similar, with our Vietnam veterans when they walk up to that Vietnam Wall. For many, it's easier going with those they served with, to see that wall. Maybe not for everybody, but I hope that is for you, or maybe you're one that, you need to be alone for a little bit when you approach that. I can't wait for you to, anyone with a heartbeat, I think going up to that, you're going to feel some kind of emotion.
Oh yeah. The Vietnam Memorial is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful memorials in DC. When you see a reflection and you see those names, and when I see the images of the memorial in New York, it's very similar in its power and its presence. So I know it's going to be an overpowering experience for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often to me, Jason. I don't get overpowered often, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But if it does feel right, I'm my first, not to keep this going for about me, my first trip to New York on Freedom to Liberty 1 retreat, like it was that Monday after we got back, and Monday morning I'm in the shower and I just started bawling, because everything finally kind of just started hitting like an onion, peeling back. So I just, I encourage people when we go on these retreats, if the time feels right, like that's your time, just do it, because there's a lot of stuff that we all hold in here, and to, let some of that out, because there's going to be many others with you, and if it feels right, don't worry about those cameras, you look good, my man. So
when Diane contacted me and she's like, Nate, get on there and get your application filled out, I couldn't tell her no.
Yeah. It's hard to say no to that woman.
That's right.
No, I can't wait to hear about your experience when you all come back again with Missions of Honor, Freedom to Liberty, number 5. Can't wait for you to experience that. So,
I'm excited and nervous, like I said.
Again, all normal feelings to have. It's sometimes difficult to admit, but everyone that you're going to be there with will probably have some common feelings as well.
Yep, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of the guys, and it'll be nice to get to know them more. And man, I don't know how you get to know somebody any more than going through something like that together, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Again, in closing, as we close this episode of the Preserving Freedom podcast, episode number 14, with Nathan Coward, twice dead, still serving. Most Americans will never stand at the graveside of a fallen hero in Arlington National Cemetery. They'll never hear the crack of rifles echo across those sacred hills. They'll never fold a flag with white-gloved hands and place it into the arms of a grieving family. They'll never know what it feels like to carry the weight of a nation's gratitude on their shoulders. Our guest does. He stood watch where America's heroes are laid to rest. He wore the uniform of the old guard an organization whose mission is rooted in honor, dignity, and respect for those who gave everything for this country. But his story is about far more than ceremony. This is a man who stared death in the face long before the world changed on September 11th. 16 stab wounds, 2 collapsed lungs, a heart that stopped twice, a life that by all accounts should have ended on a summer night in June of 2001. Yet somehow, he survived. And just days later, he returned to duty. Then came September 11th. While millions watched the horror unfold on television screens, he and the men of Alpha Company answered the call. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because America needed them. They walked into smoke, rubble, chaos, and heartbreak at the Pentagon. They searched for survivors. They searched for answers. They searched for the fallen. And when the cameras left and the headlines faded, they remained, standing watch, protecting a wounded nation, continuing the mission. As you listen to this story, remember that freedom is always dependent on ordinary Americans willing to do extraordinary things. Men and women who never expected to become heroes. People who simply raised their right hand and promised that they would serve something greater than themselves. Our guests kept that promise. It's about duty. It's about standing back up when life knocks you down. It's about refusing to quit when every reason in the world tells you to stop. It's about living a life worthy of those who never got the opportunity to come home. For every soldier resting beneath the white markers at Arlington. For every victim lost from September 11th. For every family whose chair remains empty. For every American who paid the price of freedom, may we never forget. May we never take their sacrifices for granted. And may we always strive to be worthy of the liberties they defended. To you, Nathan, brother, thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and for sharing your story with us. To all of you listening, the freedoms we enjoy today were purchased by generations of Americans who answered the call when their nation needed them most. Honor them, remember them, live worthy of them. This has been Twice Dead, Still Serving on the Preserving Freedom podcast with Army veteran Nathan Howard. I'm your host, Jason Foster, and I remind you, freedom isn't just something we celebrate, it's something we preserve every single day. Keep honoring, keep believing, keep standing proud, and as always, feel free to say it with me, damn, it's a great day to be an American. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
There we go.